Stewie. We're going to get you nice and pumped up. Now, you see that barbell over there? Go ahead and try and lift that. Hey.
Oh, your kid just needs a little help. I got something that'll get him going.
Well, if there's anyone I can trust, it's a stranger at the gym holding a dirty needle. Here, Stewie, try this.
Yeah, what the hell are you Whoa! Oh my! Suddenly I'm full of energy. All right, fat man, let's do this!
Wow, Stewie, you look like a new man.
Well, will you look at me? I have the power!
Everyone, welcome to this special broadcast. I am Brandon Klee.
I'm Delaney Walker. And
today we will be discussing the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports. PEDs have been involved in sporting events since before AD in the BC times. The ancient Greeks used these PEDs during the first Olympic Games. In fact, the origin of the word doping is attributed to the Dutch word dupe, which is a opium juice, the drug of choice for the ancient Greeks.
American athletes were first introduced to performance-enhancing drugs in the 1950s when they were introduced to amphetamines used by World War II soldiers.
Since the 1950s, the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports has only increased. Just 2 weeks ago, Dee Gordon, the 2015 NL batting average champion, was suspended 80 games for positive use of steroids.
We interviewed a few people and asked their opinions on the possible positives they see in performance-enhancing drugs.
I think they make professional sports more interesting. I think they give the athletes an extra boost that you wouldn't necessarily get to see if they didn't get to use the performance-enhancing drugs. And so I think from a fan's point of view, this is makes the game much more exciting.
I don't see any positives using drugs or enhancing.
I really don't think there's any positives in using performance-enhancing drugs. They do help you perform in ways that aren't fair towards other people that aren't taking the similar drugs.
I can see them speeding up the game and making it a lot more exciting.
Anyway, it may be more interesting to watch for the fans, but I think at some point it's just the players' personal benefit and no one else's really.
Wow, did you see that Giancarlo Stanton home run? Not saying that a player like Giancarlo Stanton takes steroids, but if everyone else in the league did take performance-enhancing drugs and were able to get to his level, we would certainly see a lot more, soaring home runs that really get the fans into the game and could possibly make professional sports a lot more interesting.
Well, that's true. The other side we saw was a lot of people don't think that performance-enhancing drugs are morally right. They think it's a form of cheating. But if they are making the game more interesting, maybe that will bring more revenue. So we should see people's opinion on that.
With steroids, athletes perform better, people are more interested, more people come to watch, more revenue. So.
Yes, they would bring more revenue. We've seen that happen with A-Rod and recently with Dee Gordon. Players that have been getting tested positively, been getting big contracts because of their improved performance in these games, and it does bring revenue.
And then maybe more jerseys will be bought and more tickets will be sold to the game. So yeah, probably.
Because players are using drugs to make them stronger, faster.
Oh, for sure. I think if every player was using PEDs and it was on a level playing field in a game like baseball, and guys are hitting 700-foot home runs, I think that makes the sport more exciting and brings more viewers to it.
We have seen a recent trend in history that along with player performance and salary increases, the steroid era has also seen significant improvements in league franchise finances. While franchise values fell during the 1990s, they increased dramatically during the steroid era, which began in the beginning of the 21st century, with the average MLB franchise value rising from $140 million in 1994 to $332 million in 2004.
Some people believe that this increase in value is seen as dirty money. The next controversial issue is the record books and whether or not the players who are on PEDs should be eligible to be in the same ones as the players who previously were not able to.
think you'd have to have the old records when people didn't use performance-enhancing drugs and the new records, because I think it'd be hard to compare people using performance-enhancing drugs and people who didn't use them, because it kind of gives them an unfair advantage.
Many people would agree that there must be a separation of a pre-PED record book and a post-PED record book.
Next question that comes up is the use of steroids any different than, let's say, a player using a protein supplement or a protein powder to induce their muscle mass? We asked another participant their opinion on the use of protein powders in sports.
Protein should not be banned because that's something that anyone could take, and it doesn't directly have like performance enhancing substances. Like, you need to, and doing other things along with that. Performance enhancing drugs are not the same as protein.
Blows past Lowry, takes it in and slams it down. This young guy.
Here comes Chris Paul. Look at Blake. Look at.
Did you just see that dunk by DeAndre Jordan on Brandon Knight? That is the result of pure muscle and strength, both things that can be attained by the use of natural materials such as protein.
As we saw, a lot of people don't agree that protein supplements are the same as using a steroid because it's a natural product, and that the player still has to work out and remain active if they're taking protein supplements or powders.
Next, we decided to ask what they thought were the potential negatives of the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports.
They're very harmful. They could be potentially fatal to some athletes, and I think it's a very unfair advantage to other players who are not taking them.
That's not a good idea. I think people should be judged based off of their natural abilities, and I think that if everybody's using these enhancing drugs, then it's just not really going to make a difference, except for the fact that now everybody's on drugs.
If not everyone's using it, the playing field isn't level, it's not fair, and there is negative health consequences to using performance-enhancing drugs.
I mean, I guess it makes it a lot easier. Instead of necessarily using skill that someone's worked so hard for all their lives or being born with a natural talent, these drugs will kind of eliminate that aspect of sports.
I think that would make the sport more fake if they're altering their powers to perform in that sport. That really takes away the human aspect of it.
It's sort of like cheating in a way. I think to be able to play professionally, you actually have to deserve the position of playing.
It's a medical issue. It's a medical risk, and we shouldn't be saying to little kids, oh, you can only be like this major league star if you take this drug.
Most common reasons why people think that PEDs should not be allowed in sports are the effects on children, the effects on possible health in the future, and because it's just flat out cheating.
Some of the health risks include liver damage, it can mess up your testosterone and estrogen levels, and can potentially stunt your growth. Since people were so concerned about the use of PEDs potentially in high school, we were wondering about the effects of performance-enhancing drugs on the recruitment process with college and high school athletes if they're now allowed to use steroids in the professional leagues.
I think it's a very slippery slope. If you start implementing performance-enhancing drugs in professional sports, then slowly it will trickle down through college and high school sports, and I think that's something that we have to avoid.
You know, when do we start to give the drugs? It's probably not going to make sense to all of a sudden, once you get into the major leagues, to take these drugs because you don't know how it's going to affect your performance.
Performance-enhancing drugs has such a big impact on someone that it could affect a person's body differently than, let's just say, like another high school athlete. So there's going to be like no way for scouts to know.
It's going to be harder for the people to put in all this work when people who are taking these drugs don't have to put in so much work.
Use of performance-enhancing drugs by high school and college athletes has become a huge concern. In a 2013 confidential survey of 4,000 high school students, it was discovered that 11% used synthetic HGH at least once, a number that is up from 5% in the 4 preceding annual surveys.
With the growing concern of high school students having access to these steroids, it's become a question whether the government has the right to step in or not. The issue is whether the government has the power to mandate over private institutions such as the MLB or the NBA with their use of performance-enhancing drugs. I asked a couple people what their opinion was on if the government should have the power to regulate performance-enhancing drugs in sports or if it should be up to the own private league.
I think that individual sports can have their own set of rules. I don't see a problem with should like the MLB, for instance, say that like within our organization, like that's not
point
allowed.
of view that either all sports should be involved in this or no sports should be involved in this. I don't think, even though they're privately owned, I don't think that they should get to pick and choose what they want.
I think generally that the league should be able to regulate the substances.
Things like Deflategate or stuff like that is going on. Like, I do believe that the government can step in, but in things like the player's health, which is PEDs, I don't believe the government has any place to say what they can or cannot do.
PA would have to approve these drugs, and then it would have to be voted on by Congress. And then it's a matter of whether every single sports league is going to use these drugs or only a few, and whether individual teams are allowed to say they don't want their players using these drugs, or it has to be the franchise as a whole.
Not to mention, if these laws were to go through and passed on a federal level, then it becomes a question whether or not the individual league's player union and commissioners association would also have to approve these very controversial laws and decisions.
We decided to ask our participants on their opinion of the overall use of performance-enhancing drugs in professional sports.
I think that in a perfect world, that performance-enhancing drugs could be used to make some games more entertaining and more exciting, but in a world where they're so easy to obtain and they could quickly become prevalent in high school and college sports, that it's not a safe avenue to go down.
Obviously, people's capabilities will be enhanced, but if everybody's are being enhanced on the same scale, then I don't necessarily see a point.
Simply because of the health factor, because of just the influence that major league teams have in our society, have on little kids, telling a little kid that this is okay, I don't think that's what we want to tell people. I guess I think we want to base it on merit, base it on hard work rather than a drug.
I think it should be a no. They're very harmful and potentially fatal.
Conducting our research, it is evident that there are quite a few pros of allowing performance-enhancing drugs in sports. One thing is more revenue. If the players are able to perform at a higher level, more fans will attend these games, and that will lead to more revenue for these franchises, which have only increased in value over the last few years. Additionally, steroid use adds to the excitement about the different sporting events. Seeing a 500-foot home run or a 60-yard Hail Mary pass through the use of steroids will certainly make these sporting events much more interesting.
Whereas some of the cons are the health risks, such as liver damage, the influence on little kids, the influence on steroids in high school sports, and just the overall moral wrong of what people believe as cheating.
Throw from Velasquez.
Thank you so much
for listening to our report.